Such a great race. Like, I don't think I could be any more excited for the start to a season.
Obviously, Mazepin once again spun out. I'm hoping that this is how it's going to be. I
Yeah.
do think that Red Bull are really strong this year. Hi everyone, welcome back to On the Chicane with myself, Marium, and Paris. Today we're going to be talking about the Bahrain Grand Prix and what a race that was. What did you think, Paris?
Such a great race. Like, I don't think I could be any more excited for the start to a season. I feel like I haven't been this excited for a season in so long, and I just thought it was so amazing. Um, what was your favorite bit?
But those last few laps, those last 5 laps, like it was insane. I think it's obvious that we've got a championship title fight on our hands this year, and
Yeah,
I'm just really excited to see how it's going to go down.
I agree. I think for once we seem to have somebody who can contend with Mercedes power, who might be able to either like beat Lewis Hamilton or at the very least push him so that he actually has to, work hard for his eighth title. And I think this year is going to be one of the best.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping so anyway. So talking about quali, let's quickly run through that.
Yeah, sure.
Um, it was a good
Take it
session
back to there.
yesterday, I think. Very surprising actually. We had quite a few interesting people come out on top.
Yeah.
Uh, Q1, Maz's spin, as they've decided to call him.
Poor
He ended up,
guy.
yeah. I mean,
Well, not poor guy in that sense, but like poor guy in the fact that like it's your first kind of quali and you spin out twice and you've had all this kind of controversy in between the seasons. So in a sense, I feel like a lot of people are rooting for him to fail.
yeah, definitely.
And I don't really like him or dislike him. I don't think I've really got a measure of him yet. So far, everything I've heard has not been good.
Hmm.
But I'm gonna give him a little bit of a chance, not a lot, to just see what he does on the track. But so far, spinning out twice.
Yeah, I know. I feel like today I really saw that, yeah, he's a rookie. Like he
Yeah,
clearly doesn't really know what he's doing. Even Schumacher, like he didn't do anything spectacular, but I was like, okay, I can tell that you're a rookie, but he managed to like finish from quite a decent position. So I think out of the two Haas drivers,
yeah,
it's already evident who's going to be coming out on top.
yeah, definitely. So I think yesterday was a bit unfortunate for him. It was unfortunate for Vettel as well. Um,
Yes.
I was a bit sad for Vettel, and I'm like I said, I've said this before. I'm not a biggest Vettel fan, but I was hoping that Aston Martin would be a really good fit for him.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously we've still got the whole season to go, so it'll be good to see how they kind of progress. But yeah,
Mhm.
not a great start to the season for him at all. Obviously, the yellow flag, not slowing down enough, and then having to start last on the grid today. And then
Yeah,
everything that he went through in the race today, it's just a shame that this is how he started out his season with Aston Martin. But I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll only be on the up from here because I really want to see him succeed.
well, we hope we can only hope.
Yeah.
And then on to Q2. So that's just Perez. I was like, damn it, like he missed out
Yeah.
by 35 hundredths of a second. And I really thought at like being in the Red Bull and him being on the soft tires when he was, and like I thought he was going to do really well. Then his lap time got deleted. Then he managed to get another lap time in, but it's like he just couldn't get a break at the right second, and I felt really bad for him, but he didn't make it into Q1, and he
Yeah.
ended up kind of being out in the middle of the pack with everybody else.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? They always say like there's a bit of a curse for like the second Red Bull drivers, and hopefully, this is what I said like at the end of last year when Perez signed for Red Bull. I was like, I'm so happy that he's found another drive, but also, did it have to be Red Bull? Because Red Bull don't really have the best track record for their second drivers. So
Yeah,
yeah, it was a bit of a shame. But to be fair, he picked himself up in the race today.
Yes, he
But
did.
Q2, obviously everyone knows I'm the biggest Ferrari fan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know they're on softs and whatever, but Leclerc and Sainz, I'm seeing like a glimpse of hope for Ferrari. Finishing first and second in Q2 yesterday was just the highlight of like my weekend, I think. Like it was just
Yeah.
nice to see them at the top, even though it means
Even though it was
little
just
to
like
nothing. Like, yeah, I
for a
think,
second.
yeah.
Because I mean, at the time, I think the Verstappen and Hamilton had done some really fast laps, but they weren't at like the top anymore. So they just kind of came in and showed maybe what they
Yeah,
could do. But I feel like Hamilton and Verstappen weren't going like fully out, and they were saving it for
yeah,
Q1. But I think Q2, like just overall, the people who kind of got out in who didn't make it into Q1, it was like a good kind of couple of people like Sonoda, Perez, Raikkonen. So those were like the mid packs leftovers. And
yeah.
then surprisingly, that was when Alonso made it into Q1. I was not expecting that.
Q3.
Oh, Q3, sorry. Yeah, so Alonso made it into Q3. I was not expecting that.
Weren't you?
No.
Why?
Alpine, firstly, I expected him to make it into Q2, but I didn't expect them to make it into Q3.
Okay.
I think I would have probably expected Perez to be in Q3
Yeah.
and then like Alonso not to be.
Okay.
So I was pleasantly surprised for him. And I think that's like the first time he's been in Q3 if you take his consecutive races, like maybe like 15 races or something like that. He hadn't made it into Q3 in his last few races at all.
I don't know, but yeah, I think it was quite surprising to see. I think Norris, um, talking about Q3 and the race itself, I think Norris has shown some really good pace. And the
Definitely.
McLarens, although not as strong as we'd expected or would hoped, I think they're still kind of showing that they're gonna really fight it out for the mid pack again this year. And to be fair, I don't really know who's gonna be their biggest competitor because I feel like McLaren are the only two that are, well, the two drivers are the only two that are kind of really consistent and strong at the moment, obviously. Um, but you're seeing with the other teams, there's Alpine, there's AlphaTauri, Ferrari. Um, I feel like you're kind of not seeing consistency from them,
Yeah.
whereas McLaren you are. So I think it'll be
I
really
think
interesting to see.
well you've got Leclerc, and even though Sainz is kind of new into Ferrari, I feel like he's a good enough driver that he probably could, after a few races, get to the point where he can also be a bit more consistent, even with a
Mm.
bad car and well, not a bad car, but like not as strong car. So I feel like maybe it will be McLaren versus Ferrari for those like fourth,
I would
fifth,
love to see that.
seventh place kind of
I'd love to see that. And I'd love to
position.
see AlphaTauri kind of pick up a bit more as well, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, so talking about the race today. So
Hmm.
first of all, let's talk about the whole we race as one thing.
Yeah,
It's quite nice to see that that's still going on, and there were some
definitely.
drivers taking a knee, and obviously they've got this whole strategy in place now for 2021 and going forward. What do you think of it?
I think it's great. I was really kind of like waiting to pay attention to see whether or not they kind of came back in with the whole We Race as One initiative, because I was like, are they really going to keep it going? How are they going to reformat it for the new year? And I like the fact that they've kind of come in with this new updated video, which I think is a little bit more impactful than the one that they had last year. They go into a little bit more of the points. The drivers seem to, whether or not they were given these words and fed these words, or whether or not
Mm.
they've got the words, come up with the words themselves, but the messages that they're putting across seem a bit clearer. And then now, like the actual initiative seems to have a bit more steam, and it has a bit more direction. They know where they're going. So it now kind of it has like three pillars
Mm.
of kind of their aims that they're trying to get. So you've got sustainability, you've got diversity and inclusion, and you've got community. So they've now kind of set up where they're trying to head with this. And I mean, in our last video, we were basically saying that if Lewis Hamilton leaves, then what's the hope for diversity? So I feel like this is a good basis where, at the very least, if they keep going while he's still in the sport, hopefully, even if he does leave, he'll have left behind some seeds that other people can build upon and pick up on. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's really important that they have kept this going. And like you say, I think it gives us hope that once Hamilton is out of the sport, there will be some sort of action continuing on,
Mhm.
which is obviously so important because Hamilton is not the only, hopefully, not the only black driver that will ever enter this sport. So, so important for future generations and for other people who are trying to get into this sport, regardless of which role you're trying to get into.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but also the whole sustainability strategy. Like Formula One isn't a sport that is like eco-friendly. Obviously, it's fuel
And it
based.
can't be.
It's
It's like
yeah,
it's
it can't
oil.
be.
There's so many things. Like look how much they have to travel and get everything across like to different
Yeah,
parts of the world, and all of the fuel that they're probably using just in air travel. So I mean, it can't be, but like
with the I'm happy with the position that the efforts that they're putting in to try and become a bit more, you know, carbon neutral. And I think they've got like an aim for like net zero, like zero carbon emissions or something by 2030. I could be
yeah.
wrong, but I
No,
think it's
you're
around
you're
then.
right. You're right. Yeah,
So yeah, I'm quite interested to see how that's going to go.
definitely.
But talking about the actual race
Yes.
today,
On to the race. So let's just talk about the early parts of the race for a second, like the first few laps. How did you feel about that? Like what remind us of what happened? Like what was your feelings as everything was starting up again?
um, I think always for someone like obviously we love to watch these races because we love to see the drivers go racing. So it's
Yeah.
quite difficult when like as soon as the race starts you have a safety car.
Hmm.
But we did. We had a safety car. Obviously, Mazepin once again spun out on the first lap.
Yeah.
So it shows absolutely zero hope for Haas. But Mazepin spun out, which meant there was a safety car out. Which meant that although Verstappen kind of got the lead in, so Hamilton was behind him, it did mean that obviously Verstappen had to kind of slow the pack down and try and keep his position so that he was at an advantage when they were ready to get going again.
Yeah.
But also talking about the start of the race, there was a formation lap issue as well with Red Bull and Perez. So
Mhm.
Perez, during the formation lap, Perez ended up stopping for due to power issues.
Yeah.
And it looked like he could potentially either be retiring or, that it just looked like there was no hope. But luckily, he managed to get the car started again.
Luckily,
Um, there was another formation lap, and then Perez actually started the race from the pit lane.
yeah.
So, yeah,
Which
Perez
is
for
good on
me,
him because I mean like he's a great driver. Can you imagine like the last time he was in Sakir, he like had to he was at the back of the pack and then he ended up having to battle his way all the way to the front and he ended up winning. I
yeah,
mean, I wasn't sure that that was going to happen again today, but like the fact that he can battle his way through the pack, he kind of took the issues on his chin. What I'm worried about though is, you've even Verstappen, he was kind of saying throughout the race, oh, I can feel, the throttle's not as strong as it should be, or something, some kind of issues. Like there's an issue with that Red Bull, and if they want to bring the title fight to Hamilton to Mercedes, they're going to need to sort this out for both of their drivers.
yeah,
So I feel like Perez was very lucky, but Red Bull need to sort this issue out.
yeah. I 100% agree. And I did watch the post-race chat between Toto and what's his name,
Christian
Christian
Horner,
Horner.
yeah.
And Horner did say obviously they were on different strategies, and in the end it was just the Mercedes strategy that kind of won. But
Mm.
he did say that he thinks that they've just got a few little tweaks to make, but he thinks that they can actually bring the fight to Mercedes this year. So I think it would definitely be interesting to see how.
Yeah.
And I would love to just see more closer battles like we had today. I think today was so good.
Definitely. I
Um,
mean, there was so much overtaking. There was, you could literally see the mechanics and the engineers calculating strategies. Like, I absolutely love that, because even me, I'm like sitting there trying to work out, well, hold on a second, if he's, just Verstappen's just put on some fresh tires, how long is it going to take him? Maybe he can catch up in 7 laps or 5 laps. Like, what's it going to be? And I'm proper sitting there trying to calculate it based on like the deficits, like as though I'm an
Yeah.
engineer. How this is going. So I absolutely love it. And I think for me, the only thing was, because there was so much happening up front, we didn't really get to see any of the back markers. But I know that it's like the first race of the season. We want to like focus on the title race. But I'd love just in the next few races to kind of like go back to the mid runners and to the back markers and see what's happening with them a little bit more, because they definitely were completely. I don't think I saw Raikkonen once this whole race. Like, I couldn't tell you what he
Yeah.
did. No
I think I
idea.
only heard his name mentioned like once or twice, to be honest, so I'm not too
Literally.
sure. Um, but yeah, no, I agree with you there. Like, I don't really. There was obviously stuff happening in the mid pack, and we did see a few things.
Yeah.
Um, I don't even recall Ricardo's name being mentioned, except probably at the start when he overtook. Can't remember
Norris.
who it was.
Well, he was fighting Norris, and then like Norris overtook him, and then there was a little moment there, which I thought could have been really interesting to like go into more. But by the time they had a chance to even look at it, oh no, something's happening with Verstappen and Mercedes and Hamilton again.
Yeah,
Um, Gasly. So there was a moment where he kind of like went spun out a little. Well, he didn't spin. He went off into the gravel a bit, and he lost his front wing.
yeah,
So that kind of put him back. I know you love a bit of Gasly.
I do. I'm like genuinely in love with him. Like, it's actually quite sad. They're also like all shorter than me, so it's actually quite pathetic when I say I love these people, because I'm like, I don't actually have a chance with them, but a girl can
You
dream.
never know. You never know. So yeah, he kind of like lost a bit of his front wing. Schumacher then spun out. They had a bit of a virtual safety car. So this is still quite early in the race. This was in the first 5 or so laps. But there was just like, I feel like there's a lot kind of going on with those teams, and for example, Schumacher and that Haas needs to learn, how to kind of deal with a car that's probably not responding to him as the way he wants, like
Mm,
the oversteer, the traction, all of those kind of things. It's not going to be great, and that's going to cause him to like go off of the racing line a lot. So I think he needs to just make sure he's on top of that.
yeah, definitely. But again, talking about strategies and whatever, let's discuss the whole Bottas pit stop slash tire situation. What do you
How do
think?
you feel about that?
It's obviously just ridiculous, and it's hard because you can see that the team do put more of their effort into Hamilton, and I feel like Bottas and pit stops in Bahrain just don't get along. He's always got this kind of issue, and
Yeah.
it's always in Bahrain. And I feel like whenever there is a pit stop issue with Mercedes, it's always Bottas,
Yeah.
and it's just a bit unfair, I guess. But yeah, I don't know if it was the right strategy for Mercedes to pull. They definitely could have aimed for P1 and P2 rather than P1, P3, and fastest lap. Like, I think if they'd pushed a bit more, they could have tried to actually get their drivers both in better positions.
I
But
think they were definitely snoozing a little bit, because maybe it's because they've had 7 years of not having to work this stuff out. Do you know what I mean? Like, they haven't been in this situation for so long where, oh, if we do that, how's that going to affect the first driver, the second driver. Now they're having to do this, split second
mm,
calculations, and they're getting it wrong. Like, I feel like they put Bottas on the wrong strategy. He was saying that he felt very defensive as a driver, and then obviously then they messed up his pit stop, his second pit stop. His first pit stop was really good. It was like
mm.
2.7 seconds, no, 2.2 seconds, I think. And then they messed up the second pit stop when it was like 10 seconds, and that just can mess up his whole mindset, because like Bottas is a bit fragile as well. He doesn't like feeling like the second driver.
Yeah.
So I feel like if they're already like putting him in the position to be on the defensive rather than the offensive, then they kind of like take away his strategy by completely messing it up with the pit stop. He's just gonna go down really really fast, and I feel bad for him.
I agree. I don't know. I really don't know if he's got a chance of fighting for this title
Yeah.
whilst Hamilton is his teammate. If this is Hamilton's last year, then maybe Bottas will stand a chance next year. But
Mm.
at the moment, with the way that like Mercedes always seem to favour Hamilton, I
Yeah.
just don't think he's ever. It's kind of like the same situation with Rosberg. It wasn't until Rosberg literally defied team orders and was like, "I'm taking matters into my own hands. I'm going to do this the way that I want to." That's the only way that he managed to win that title that year.
And I don't
Um,
think Bottas naturally has that kind of selfishness in him. I don't
yeah,
think he can do that.
mm,
I think a little bit of him will always defer because actually it's more so not so necessarily his selfishness, but he has to be able to have his own technical knowledge and apply that. Because if you're going to do something that differs from what the team is telling you to do, you need to know that this move is going to be like it's going to benefit me, it's going to put me in this better position. And I haven't seen him show that kind of acumen. Oh, hello kitty.
sorry.
I haven't seen that kind of acumen from him where it's like I'm so cutthroat that I know that if I do this move, and even though it defines team orders, even though like it's going against what my engineer says, it's going to put me in a better position. Like people like Verstappen naturally have that. Like
Mm,
Verstappen, like for example, at the end of the race, like Verstappen was like, "Oh, you should have just left me out because."
yeah,
So he got his penalty, and he's like, "If you should have just left me out, because even if you left me out, I'd have been able to make up that five second penalty time." Who knows if he really would have been able to do it? But the fact that he's sitting there, he's already
yeah,
calculated that. He's already thinking like, do you know what? I don't really care. I'm just gonna do what I want to do. Like he has that, and Bottas doesn't have that. I think
yeah. I do agree with you there. I don't know. It's just
it's a shame.
it is a shame for Bottas, but you've just got to literally just you've got to do what you've got to do. And I like you say, I don't think it comes naturally to Bottas. I think he's obviously hungry and
Mm,
he's determined, but it's always like at the end of a session, like even just now, he was just saying, I'm disappointed and he just feels deflated. And it's like, well, then do something about
yeah,
it. Like, no
definitely.
one's going to do it for you. You have to actually be like, all right, you know what? Fuck what the team's saying. I'm going to go out and do what I want to do because this matters to me.
Because
So
if you
yeah.
compare it to like Verstappen and Hamilton, like Verstappen's obviously just lost. He just lost his
Mm,
whole race, but he was still kind of like that was a good race. Do you know what I mean? Like he was
yeah.
still in the position where he still enjoyed the fight.
Yeah.
Bottas isn't enjoying the fight. He isn't even
No.
enjoying anything that's happening.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think about like Verstappen's whole fighting style, that whole battle, the way it led up to it at the end, like the fact that Mercedes tried to undercut them and then wasn't able to keep the tires and stuff?
Um, do you know what? I feel like I have to give it to Verstappen. As much as he came into the sport as an absolute brat, literally feeling like the world owed him,
Hmm.
he has really matured, and I think he's matured quickly. He kind of has more now, what I would say is kind of like Hamilton's mentality, where he's like just thinking about what it takes to win, as opposed to throwing his toys out of the pram, which is what I think all the drivers have done at some point in their careers. But he's kind of grown up, and I'm starting to prefer his driving style now because before he used to be very like erratic and make these
Yeah,
stupid mistakes, and he'd always like get into these scuffles with Ricardo when they were both at Red Bull. And I just remember thinking, you're literally just so stupid. Like
yeah,
he's not your like um competitor here. You need to try and like be getting ahead. But it was always like the two teammates going at it with each other. Um, so yeah, I do think Verstappen's style in general has really progressed.
mm,
Today, again, I do think we saw the fact that he is a bit of a rookie. Talking about like the final 5 laps, that's kind of when the race was lost for Max. Um, they were both fighting it out, and Max managed to get ahead of Hamilton, but it was exceeding track limits. He went off the track, and so he was told to, give back position to Hamilton. But I don't think Verstappen really thought ahead as to when the best time was to give him that position back or when the best time was to maybe attack. So
yeah,
by not thinking ahead, he then, I think, kind of gave himself a bit of a disadvantage because had he thought, okay, actually, maybe this straight is where I need to give him his position back, and then as soon as he's ahead of me, I can then fight back. But I think he
Mm.
just gave it back as soon as the team said, give back your position. And I don't think it was the best place on the track for him to be doing that.
Yeah,
Um, so I do think that him obviously not kind of calculating that and not really thinking ahead did lose him that race in the end, because in the end it took him forever to finally get within DRS range. And then by the time that he was within DRS range, I think there were like 2 laps left.
yeah,
And obviously that's not really enough time to try and attack. And Hamilton really held it down to
he
get
did.
past that checkered flag.
I feel like when people think of Hamilton, they're like, oh yeah, but he's in the best car. And like, to me, today shows all those people who always say that about Hamilton can eat their words, because he wasn't in the best car. Like, arguably, I feel like Red Bull right now is the best car on the track. He didn't have the best tires because his tires were 10 laps older than Verstappen's tires. He was under so much pressure. So, and he still managed to like maintain his mental to be like, okay, cool, guys, don't worry, I've got this. I'm just going to do everything I can. And
Yeah,
he held off Verstappen. He planted that car in positions where Verstappen could not overtake him. Even though he was trying to, he could not, which to me, it shows that he's a good technical driver. He's
yeah,
not just a person who's, oh, if you put him in the right car. No, he didn't. The odds were stacked against him today, and he still managed to
yeah,
hold Verstappen off. So I feel like, like they give him kind of bad stick all the time, but I don't think he really deserves it. And I feel like
mm,
days like today really prove it.
yeah,
So I feel like he did well. And what was I going to say? So there was like a moment, the laps before Verstappen actually overtook Hamilton, like before he had to give the position back. He was gaining on him, and he was like getting so much closer. And I feel like if we're in like Verstappen's mind for that whole process, he probably was thinking to himself, like, okay, when's the right time? Right, just got to keep it good on these corners. And he was in a very, very good position.
mm,
And like you said, I feel like he just lost it after he failed. And
mm,
it was such a shame, because if he had just kind of maybe kept that same mentality that he had before, he had to give the position back. He was probably so pissed off. He was just like, oh, why do I have to give it back? And that
mm,
immediately, the 2 laps after that, he kind of messed up a little bit.
mm,
The tires weren't in the right position anymore, because I think having to slow down to give Hamilton back the position meant that the tires weren't in their prime mode anymore. So I don't know. For me, he just needs to kind of like build up that whole mentality and get to that place, like you said, of that championship
yeah.
mentality.
Yeah, I do agree. But I also think like we are in the first race of the season. There's like what 22, 23 races left or something. So I think, you know, if this is how it's going to be, Verstappen will get his chance. And I'm hoping that this is how it's going to be. I
Yeah,
do think that Red Bull are really strong this year. I would love to see a bit more from Perez and Bottas, to be honest. I'd love to see the four of them fighting it out as opposed to just
mhm.
the two of them. And I'm hoping that Perez can kind of come in and give Verstappen that kind of helping hand that he needs as a teammate to be able
Yeah,
to A, get the points for Red Bull, and B, maybe for Verstappen to get the title. I do actually think I want Hamilton to win the title this year, but I want it to be a fight. I want it to be a really tough fight that goes down to the wire, and I think it will just give us such a great season of action.
definitely. I think one thing I was thinking the whole time when they were getting their trophies at the end, and I was just thinking about the fact that the constructors and the drivers had to be like, this is what the fans want. This is what everybody wants to see. They want to see that fight. And I was like, do you know what? That's actually such a shame, that it really shows the state of F1 and what F1 has been for the last few years. That a person who came second when they were about to be first couldn't even be like in despair. They couldn't even be so upset with themselves, because in their head they were like, do you know what? At least I got to fight. Like, I feel like it's a bit of just a little bit of a shame that he couldn't be completely angry that he didn't win. And I know that sounds so crazy. Like, we don't want anger on the
Mm,
podium. We don't want people to be upset. And like, it was nice that they fist bumped each other at the end and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of cool. But at the same time, I feel like the general overall atmosphere of F1 is that at least they're racing. And that, to me, that's a given. Like, they should be racing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we just need to get it to the point where, yes, they're always racing. Now, what are we racing for?
I think that's what we can look forward to next year, though. Hopefully, with a bit
Yeah.
more of a level playing field, it would be so great to see more title contenders and more people like, actually, I
Mhm.
want this. And, someone like Gasly in an AlphaTauri who can battle a Mercedes and be like, actually, this time I'm actually going to try and give you some stick and get ahead of you. So I think that's what we can definitely hopefully look forward to next year. But
Definitely.
yeah, so we've got the next race in a few weeks.
Yep.
It's at Imola in Italy, which is a new track that they brought on last year. Going to be interesting.
Definitely.
Hopefully, all eyes won't be on Ferrari, but I guess we'll see.
I think
Yeah,
Ferrari is strictly Monza, so hopefully they'll have a little bit of breathing
yeah,
space at Imola.
yeah.
So, but it will still be interesting. I want to see McLaren doing a little bit better. Can we just give props a bit to Lando Norris as well? I
Oh
was
yeah,
very surprised at his position throughout the
he
whole
did
race.
so well.
He did really, really well.
Like keeping
Um,
on to that and like coming home fourth. For honestly, like I know he's a rookie, but he is definitely like championship material, I think, and we're witnessing his kind of development really early on, which I'm loving. Yeah,
I
him
agree.
and I think him and Leclerc really held it down today.
Mhm,
Obviously, it didn't really work out in Leclerc's favour, but for Norris to come fourth, brilliant.
definitely. Um, so man of the race, who's your best driver?
Perez
Perez, same.
for coming from for what he did, for coming
Yeah,
from like last to fifth, brilliant stuff from him.
amazing,
Yeah,
brilliant. And so yeah, so next race, McLaren to do a little bit better, Perez to be able to hold off Bottas and like fight,
hmm,
and just a little bit better from Ferrari. That would be, I'd be
yeah,
happy with seeing all of that.
yeah, me too. So on that note, guys, I guess we will catch you next time with the Imola rundown. Thanks
Yeah,
for watching.
see you in a few
Comment,
weeks.
like, share, subscribe, all the rest of it. And hopefully, yeah, we'll see you in a few weeks.
Bye.